Now, the second piece is the alignment with the business. What are their goals? What is the business trying to accomplish? And you need to put as a second piece there, because if I lock down the data so much that the business don't get anything out of it, there's no point. And the opposite to that, if I give them the kind of the Wild West opening everything, then I can get myself, just like you mentioned, into lawsuits or trouble, legal troubles, and so on. So those are the kind of the two key things, using the frameworks with policies, and then align yourself with the business. What are their goals?
Thank you for joining the Data Heads podcast. We're super excited to have Miguel here, who's had over 15 years of experience having worked for Microsoft, AWS, Pepsi, and currently is at Zoom, leading their data strategy and data governance operations. We're super excited to have him here as he's going to lead us through a conversation on how data governance relates to the implementation of AI. So again, thank you, Miguel. Super excited to have you here.
First, thank you so much for the invitation, and thank you so much for giving the opportunity to talk in your podcast. It's really excited to be here. But when we talk about data, I think the baseline across the communities is the same. We understand it has to be with enough quality. We don't want to ingest garbage in, garbage out. We all know that. But the real challenge comes with AI in terms of, well, how much data can I train my models, or can I use? And if we talk even now about ChatGPT and all these LLMs, the large language model, all this, they say, no, more, give me more data. We need even more. So we're talking about terabytes of data. And we are at the danger of giving them everything. Oh, okay, the data scientists or the group doing this, they want more data. I'm going to give them everything and not worry about security or data governance or data lineage, any of that. I'm just going to give you everything. They're going to figure it out. Well, that's not truly the case. And especially, I'm gonna break it down into two type of data. Structured data and unstructured data. Structured data, we're more familiar, databases, tables, and things that we are normally used in back in the old days of data warehousing, and we're very familiar because we can put a lot of restrictions around that based on users, based on permissions, based on different things. Now, unstructured data is a little bit different. We're talking about flat files, we're talking about text, images, and videos, things that they don't have that security around it, and they're easy to just kind of feed it to the LLMs or to the bigger models and say, okay, well, that's a video, who cares? Well, the reality of it is that we should be aware of those type of security things that as data governance we're doing, and we have to do it in my approach is more like at different levels. First, you start with the most restricted level. If you have data, if you are a healthcare provider or you're a lawyer, you work for the government, you have hardcore lines that you will never pass, right? We're talking about, for example, healthcare, social security number, patient's identification, things, records, things that we know that are a big no-no to pass that information. So we need to be diligent of deleting or masking or not passing that information to the modelers. Then the second piece is, then we go to the next level. Is well, now what about company policies? The company says, well, you shouldn't be sharing information about salaries or about other stuff like that. Then, okay, we need to do that exercise. And then you keep going those levels. And at one point you get to, with no restrictions, say, okay, well, this is general information that we understand. And then the other piece is what is a data set that is more relevant than others. I'm talking about that level of, I understand I'm going to get more from this data set than from the others. Be very diligent about that. Be aware that you have data sets that the business itself says, hey, this is a business report that it has figures of how much we sold last year, or we have other type of report that we know that are very critical. Normally you will get that information a bigger priority. The example that we're doing today is projecting numbers, right? I want to know, based on this economy, based on the last year numbers, what is our projection? Well, you need clear data and data that is being pass through those filters to be able to do that. And then kind of the last piece that is related to that is how do you integrate both, right? How do you integrate the structured data and unstructured data? And then you can have different approach. The way we do it is we use hybrid models. You have different type of sets of data, and at one point you combine those into one, and using the data types to organize those. There are methods that you can use. You put labels, you put tags, you organize them in a way, and then at one point you have this kind of uniform set of data that you can say, okay, this is a set of data 001 that we created in this day with all these data sets, because it will allow you, when you grow it and you add more volume, to follow that procedure saying, hey, the rules still apply. We cannot just ignore all of those and feed data without thinking of security and lineage, and because then we'll get ourselves into trouble.
Yeah, and I think what's critically important, I think there's a lot of work being done on like data contracts on as it relates to kind of data lineage, and the necessity of plugging in those AI agents to really leveraging and utilizing those proper data lineage and acknowledging how and where things came to be, and then using that, if you have it, to place confidence scoring, right? So if you have like a master data management program or whatever that may be, you can end up leveraging some of that like confidence scoring of the source data itself, and then the corresponding fields to then feed into these models and these agents to do that. So I really appreciate that, and I think one of the big questions you kind of touched on is like that bifurcation between structured versus unstructured data as it relates to data quality and data governance. And it's kind of interesting how there's kind of like a certain volume of work that's put into working on like your warehouse or your data lakes and your structured data to ensure that it is got masking or whatever is necessary to protect that. And then have you experienced or have you seen people leveraging or using like AI tools or AI agents on classifying documents or words within unstructured data? So, for example, if we have a contract, right, a legal contract that has a bunch of PII or information that's specific or unique to the company, that you still want to be able to leverage information therein, but at the same time, you want to be able to be making sure that it's like flagging either sentences or whole documents as validating or violating CCPA or GDPR type of instances that could be detrimental put at scale, right? So if you have a large organization and you have these contracts, you have these PowerPoint slides or whatever they may be, and they have either metadata or actual data in there. Let's suppose you had a PowerPoint slide that was going over a finance or marketing team's directives, and then it had an org chart of who is fulfilling which activities, right? Like that's going to be potentially very like sensitive information. And so, have you seen or talked through with any individuals, read articles on how people are using AI agents to facilitate the data governance and classification of data and before it gets ingested into these language models for further use?
Yeah. So if I can talk about the experience that I
Yeah.
have, you kind of start on the beginning with the tools, right? There are several tools on the market. I've used at least 3 of them, that they qualify those fields and that data. And I'm sure there's a lot more, but those tools are very smart about the basic things. So when we're talking about credit card numbers, social security numbers, and the more generic PII, they're normally pretty good about telling you, hey, I identified this as a credit card number. You should probably mask this, and you can even give them a lot more freedom to say, hey, ingest this data, mask the one that you recognize, and let me know the ones that you're not sure, and then you go back and review those fields and those things. That is probably more, what I started about 6-7 years ago, 5 years ago. Now we're in a kind of more advanced place. You're mentioning about agents and things that they're a little bit deeper on that. My only caveat, my only experience with that is that we are not yet, and I don't think we're close to it, to remove entirely the human from the
Of
picture. What I mean
course.
by that
Right.
is some tools they'll be like, no, we're so intelligent. My agentic AI and my AI models, they can do everything. And just give them the document, boom, everything is clean, nice, and everything is doing what it's supposed to. It's like, well, there are still false positives. There's still things that they don't catch. There's still things that you need to oversight. So with the new agents coming into place and working in a pilot, that you give them the understanding that, hey, those are some of the fields. Can you catch some other ones? And it's pretty good about telling you, say, hey, I think I recognize this pattern, or I can see this other thing, and they will flag it for you. And all you have to do is review it. And then when you flag it one time, when you review it one time, the second time you can tell, and if you find it again, no need to review, just report it at the end. How many of those have you found? And I think that's a way to work faster and smarter
Right.
in a way that it will give you that report and say, hey, I have reviewed, for example, and this is a real example, I have reviewed 1,000 documents and I have put, 10,000 flags. And then from my previous day, I thought, wow, that's a high number. What happened here? Compared to before, it was only a couple thousand, now 10,000. So I have to go back, and one of the filters got removed, and then it was flagging everything. So again, don't remove the person from the middle of the process, but start using these tools, implementing them, kind of in the middle to help you to go faster and go smarter. Let me give you a real example that I work with. Today in real estate, the address of a property is considered unique, right? So your house address is your
Right.
house address, and you shouldn't have two that are the same, right? Kind of easy to understand. Well, in a real estate company, you have sometimes the issue that you're not sure that the address that they're telling you is correct or not. It's a place, it's a drive, it's a circle, it's a court.
Right.
What is exactly the address? And then
Yeah.
did they forget the apartment number? Doesn't have an apartment number. So all those questions, right, coming into place. Well, AI and some companies are working through that, and they're getting better and better and better to kind of tell you, including Google, for example, that they have their own API to tell you, hey, the address here. And by the way, one of the ones that is free and is out there and is pretty good is the USPS, the Postal Service. So they have their own way to verify an address because they have to deliver something to there. But even at that level, even with all the tools on the market, there are a small percentage of addresses that you still don't know. Let me tell you why. Sometimes there's a new development. They just bought the piece of land. The address is still not official yet.
Right.
But the real estate agent say, oh, it is official. I'm going to sell the house that is going to be built there. You need to publish this. And you're like, well, if I go to Google, if I go to the USPS webpage, if I go to all these other tools that tell me it doesn't exist, or I'm not sure, or give me two different answers. So at that point, you understand that there's going to be a small number of outliers that the human still need to be in the picture on the reasoning and make those decisions. Machines are not going to be able to tell you, because maybe it's about timing, maybe it's about decision making, maybe it's about whatever that is. So that's why with data, that example is a really good a reminder for me that there's no magic wand that is going to do everything. You need to be very aware that tools and processes and some of these AI things are going to help you. But if you remove the human from the middle, and in this case, data governance from the picture, you're going to end up with things that they can be small problems or things that can be big problems. But at the end of the day, machines or AI, they're not able to make those decisions because they don't really understand. Because even humans sometimes say, well, I'm making the decision. This is the address. The real estate agency is telling me this is going to be the address, but they're not done building yet. I'm going to trust that. and maybe a review in 3 months from now. So those are the type of things that when we're talking about data and structured data and how do you leverage all these new tools, you want to make sure that you're able to do all these things.
So given GDPR and CCPA and their impacts on data privacy and the necessity of that, and not only are we trying to ensure that we protect people's individual information and security, but at the same time, we're also making sure that we're not creating lawsuits for our companies, right? So, and walking that tightrope of making sure that these agents don't access or wrongfully deliver those types of tools, whether it be from a large language model or whatever it may end up being. And at the same time, navigating the walk of you have the top down push of we know that if we don't start implementing AI, we're going to fall behind our competitors, right? So you have these executives who are saying, implement these tools here, here, and here, because we have identified these are going to be the highest value places and use cases for these tools. Go ahead and implement them, and then also still make sure you're navigating that. So what have you found from like a governance or whatever perspective to ensure that we're walking that line, that we're dealing with and ensuring that these tools are not getting access to that information, or if they do, that it's properly flagged in such a way that they don't leverage it?
Right. So I'm going to give you the 2+1 things that I've done, and I'm going to be completely agnostic about tool or platform. I'm not talking about branding or anything. So whatever tool you're using, whatever platform, whatever AI thing, magical thing that you're using, I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking is about first, policy frameworks. Second, alignment with the business. And then the third one, and the third one is an optional. That's why I say 2+1, is about data stewardship. When we talk about first on the policy frameworks, it's really important to have those governance policies that are robust and that they are very structured. We talk about GDPR, we talk about CCPA, we talk about industry standards, things that that's the framework. That's things that it should sustain your data. And they should be pretty robust in terms that they're not wobbly. They cannot be moving around. They're pretty standard nowadays. Now, the second piece is the alignment with the business. What are their goals? What is the business trying to accomplish? And you need to put as a second piece there, because if I lock down the data so much that the business don't get anything out of it, there's no point. And
Right.
the opposite to that, if I give them the kind of the Wild West opening everything, then I can get myself, just like you mentioned, into lawsuits or legal troubles, and so on. So those are the kind of the two key things: using the frameworks with policies, and then align yourself with the business. What are their goals? And then kind of the third one: if you are available to do it, if you have the money, the people, the time to do it, use data stewards. And the data stewards can be part of your team, can be separate, there are different models that you can implement. But those are kind of the three things that you can put in place to make sure that you're doing the right thing as a data governance or in charge of data governance.
Got it. So if I'm hearing you properly, it's putting in policies and frameworks that are aligned with the business, and then presumably or hopefully you have the executive leadership supporting you in having the data stewards necessary for the oversight and execution of some of all of this. Is that
right?
So is there certain frameworks or policies that you prefer or recommend? What are some of those things that you're like top of mind? Like I found these to be personally successful, that have made that difference.
Right. So I'll divide it between a structured data and unstructured data. For structured data, first one is trying to implement automated data validation rules. So things that you can actually make it automatic, because at one point you're going to find the rhythm of what is the filters, the type of things that you need to do. The caveat to that is when you onboard a new set of data, you might have to review it. Does it apply? Is it fit? Do I need to tweak it a little bit? But that automated data validation, create those rules, and it will help you to monitor those type of data ingestions and movement of data. Second piece, and keep talking about structured data, is those pipelines that you're building, making sure that you can scale those and you can make sure that those already in the industry, we're talking about Parquet files and type of files that you can actually grow as a bigger number, optimize those. There are tools now that they allow you to compress those, to move them faster. But when you're putting those pipelines in place, make sure that you can scale up, that you don't have to have one person, one click, one step at a time, because that's not scalable. You have to make it, like I said, automatic, scalable. And the third thing is you are thinking about getting them AI ready. And what that means is that at one point in the dream stage, you will remove everybody. Everything is going to be auto magically, right? Auto magically doesn't exist. But that's the idea. That's the purpose, is to keep saying, can I remove some clicks? Can I remove some processes steps that I have to do today? Maybe put some filter in the middle. And that's where agentic AI today is creating this new mentality, this new idea of like, hey, instead of having a person doing this or reviewing this, can actually have a little tiny agent that it goes and review and report back to the person in this. So then I don't need 10 people, I need 2 people and 10 agents. Can I do that? Is it gonna work? Then you start kind of thinking that way about making your model AI ready. And that's kind of the third piece. For the unstructured data, number one is your metadata. How do you tag those? It's really, really important because you need 2 things. It needs to be discoverable and it needs to be traceable. Those things means I need to understand what type of data I'm ingesting, and I need to be able to look back, to trace back. Where is this coming from? Did anything change? Somebody made a change or not? And all those things. And the second piece of that in unstructured data has to do with how do I convert this into pipelines? Remember, keep thinking, how do I make this automatic? How do I make it a structure? How do I make it scalable? Those are the second piece that you have to be doing. And then there are tools and places that you can do a landing zone in AWS in S3, in Microsoft in Azure, you have a landing zone. So you can think of unstructured data almost like a blob initially. I have to put it somewhere.
Right.
But then at one point, I have to start taking piece out of it, organizing it, cleaning it, and making those pipelines. And hopefully we can make it automatic, and I can make it with those validation rules and part of the framework. And that's the whole mentality. That's the whole idea.
Right. No, that makes perfect sense. So then who ends up being, I think the big question is, with that, who then ends up becoming accountable, right? So like if we have, I know you'd mentioned earlier, like the necessity of having a reviewer. We can't just spin up these agents, even if we have perfectly clean data, which nobody has. Even if we had perfectly clean data, like there still needs to be a person who kind of does a spot check review. Okay, yes, that makes sense. This is good. That's good. This is good. How are you proposing, or how have you seen it done, or have you personally implemented ensuring accountability for these language models, these AI agents, whatever it is that people are implementing? How do you make sure that this is not just a deterministic set of programmable logic, right? Because we're implementing these neural networks and these things of that nature, it's not just deterministic, and we know that the system operates the way that it was programmed to do so. So how do we balance this like shift from traditional software and development where it's very deterministic to these agents, these large language models, these language models, or even just some of the ML tools, and ensuring that they're done in such a capacity that who's accountable, and how do you draw that line? How do you make sure that you do a proper dividing line on a racy model, for example, for your AI implementations?
Right. So probably the biggest mind shift that I've seen in the industry, and that is becoming more and more normal, is everybody's responsible for data at one point or another. No matter where you are in the business, when you work with computers or with data, at that point you are responsible for that data set to a degree. So the old mentality of it's not my job
Right.
has to change. If it has not changed, it has to change. But now it's becoming more about being an expert on your area, being an SME that they call it, a subject matter expert for the places that you're working with data. But more specifically, and this is where I'm going to the next level, at least in my example, who is your data steward? And I've seen it two different models. I've seen the ones that they are a very unique person with that title, that position, that they got hired for that. And they were put inside of a business group to say, hey, I'm here to make sure the quality of the data is correct, that we follow the rules, that we do all these things. Or the other model is that I go back to the business, and this is the one that I'm implementing today. I go back to the business and say, who is your data expert on your team? Who is the one who knows the data the best and is willing to kind of step up to the plate to help the company and my data governance team to be that key element? And normally it will be like one or two person. Hey, they've been here a long time. They know the data. They know
Right.
the history behind it. Those person, you add a little bit more to the job, not a whole lot, a little bit more to say, hey, be aware of these things, data quality rules, tagging. How do you actually ingest the data? Is this something new? Have we seen it before? No, yes. And then report back. You're going to be in charge of this set of data that is coming your way, but you're going to be in charge of reporting it back. So create these fake titles of data SMEs or data governance or data stewards inside of your team to make sure that everybody is aware of that. And the way I'm trying to influence those teams to say, hey, that's the entry door to become a data scientist, to become somebody who work with AI, somebody who, because if you don't understand the data, you will never be able to do that. But if you're already working with data and your data set is very high quality and follow the rules, we can promote you to the next levels up of things that we need to do with the data. So that way we change that mentality. So those things of everybody's in charge of data. Everybody should be aware of data quality issues, and everybody should be thinking of it is my job to make sure that my quality is important. It goes back to what you were mentioning about who is responsible. Well, you can follow that process. Where did it fail? When did it change? What happened? Go back. Then you can go back to that team and say, hey, team, what happened here? Somebody changed, but nobody catch this. Why? We're not paying attention, or there's something, is there a gap that we need to fix?
Right.
So those things help the bigger picture of how this is now the data governance team job is not my job, or the IT department, not my department. More like, hey, data is everybody's job. And the way I explain it is that, think about this. If you were working for a bank and they give you a bag of gold coins, what will you feel responsible that, hey, you give it to the next person and the next person to the next person while you're holding that bag of gold? You are responsible. Data is that. Data is the new gold, the new oil, what they call it. But when you have it, this is your responsibility. You want to make sure that you're doing the right thing.
Yeah, I love that analogy of people holding the bag and using gold as a perspective of like, hey, look, if our data is truly the new gold, right? I think Forbes listed it as the new oil, right? This was like several years
Mhm.
back. Um, and if that's the case, are we bringing in a data culture where each individual user is fully aware of the culpability that they have with each interface that they have with the data, and leaving things unpopulated, using free-form text fields in ways that are just incongruent, um, or even just not properly labeling or tagging documents properly, right? If you're using some of the more unstructured data, the critical nature and the impacts that has. And so, if I'm hearing you properly, it's like, and you took it in a direction I wasn't expecting, to be honest. And so, like, and I appreciate it. I think it's enlightening. I think it's good for the users to think about it this way. Oftentimes, we kind of like, there was a Simpsons episode back in like the '90s where I think the quote was, "He who tops it off drops it off." Right, and it was whoever put the last piece of trash on top of the trash can had to take it off out to the can. And so, like, I think oftentimes we think that way in terms of like data teams. It's like he who tops it off drops it off. Whoever touched it last is a person who's fully accountable. And so, therefore, if an AI agent or a ML tool or whatever produces some wacky result or produces a hallucination or produces some sort of or allows some sort of sensitive information to leak past, that at the ultimate end of the conclusion, it was the AI agent because it was the one who topped it off, so therefore they dropped it off. And so I think that that's super fascinating, this idea of like, no, like it goes back to the users. And so it's critically important as an organization to take major step backs and say, hey, I am responsible when I touch that data. Every interaction, every interface that we have from the BDR rep all the way up to the person who is managing that AI agent or programming it. Everybody's fully accountable or at least responsible, right? And the accountability may sit on the shoulders of the AI agent because it's a final deliverable, but I think that that's super fascinating. Like, how do we? It ultimately comes back to a data culture that has to be set up, and then that full data lineage of auditability. Like, how do we? Okay, yeah, this AI agent did this, or this language model did that, or this ML tool did this. But at the end of the day, what was the data that changed, or how did we have something underlying that fed it something to produce this monkey or this you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, so very fascinating. I really appreciate that perspective of like, hey, responsible is everybody, accountable maybe it's the agent, but I think that that's
Right. And yeah, and I can give you the positive spin on that, right? Is that if something goes wrong, who's responsible, right? We're all afraid of, I don't want to lose my job.
oh yeah,
But give it the positive spin. For example, and this is a real case. Let's say the data scientists, they're in charge of saying, hey, we need to produce at least, 75% of high quality product that insights and blah, 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 right? And they go and do that. And then next thing the business say, well, what about 80%? What about 85%? How do you improve that? And at one point, the data scientists, they have the data set that they have, and they at one point they kind of squeeze that as much as they want. But if the quality doesn't change, the data doesn't change, they're not gonna get nothing much better. And then it goes back to the that change of the data. Who is tagging it, what quality do we enrich the data? So if the people in that process is aware of this, hey, if we add this field, if we add this value, the data is better. It's easier to identify. We get more information from it. You probably are making the life at the end of the chain, the AI, the data center, whoever that is in charge, to squeeze more value out of that. And that's the positive side. Not only when it goes wrong, yeah, you want to be able to go back and say, what happened? How do we fix it? But actually to add more value to enrich that process, that value,
right.
then it has to become the same mentality.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you take it back to like the oil analogy, right? You can have extremely dirty crude oil, right? And the process by which it was extracted, right? And this is not to get into like any forms of like views on the environment or anything. How it gets extracted can produce a very raw, crude, dirty form of it. And there's other means which can be very clean versions of it, right? So how it's performed, how it's done, and how it gets into the pipe can make a dramatic difference on its quality. And that's true with anything, right? And um, so yeah, I really appreciate this idea of it's an everyone effort. And so, yeah, and I think to that end, I think you've hit the nail on the head, which is just uh, data governance starts at every user. And if we want to have organizations implement AI, everybody along the chain needs to be involved in ensuring the data quality. Now, I'm sure that maybe there's going to be departments like the the data teams, the data governance teams that are going in and making sure that they're putting forth the patterns and the policies and the frameworks in alignment with the business stakeholders to drive that data quality, to ensure that the AI tools, the ML tools, and the language models that they're implementing are actually producing them for the greatest value with the greatest privacy and security. But it starts with each person, and I think on that note, like, I just want to say thank you so much for joining, and I just really appreciate these insights, because I think everybody is better for thinking along those lines and how to set up and develop a data culture that augments those very same things. So thank you, Miguel.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And if I can close with something, is that at the end of the day, it's a balance, right? We need to be able to be efficient. We need to be able to follow the compliance. We need to be able to create the AI innovation that everybody is very excited. But we cannot forget about the data governance piece, and this is everybody's job.
Right.
And if we are all helping the users or the people, the business on that along and giving them the tools and the regulations and the things that they need, we all win. If we don't, then we go back to this is the Wild West. We can do whatever we want, everything. And then data breach happens and issues happen,
Right.
and everybody's in trouble. So if we think that way, I think we'll be able to find that balance that is so difficult. But that operational balance for everybody is a win for everybody. And thinking of that as something that it has a lot of value for you, for your job, but for the company as a whole, then let's try to change that mind strategy of it's not my job, I only doing my thing, versus, hey, this is data, this is important, has a lot of value. Let me make sure I do the right thing and the best that I can to give it to the next person or the next processes that it's waiting for my job to be better, to be done.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you so much for joining, and I just look forward. Hopefully, maybe we can have you on again in the future. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you, Ian. Thank you so much.